Hey guys, how you doing today? We are going to do another video on 7.4 and take a moment right now to get your notebook all set up where you're going to write down the topic and the date. And our essential question for this video is what types of equations can I solve? So what types of equations can I solve? So in algebra, solving for a variable, like solving for x, is kind of a main skill, and we really practice it in algebra because later down the road we're going to use those solving skills to do something else. Hopefully solve some real life problems or do some graphing or whatever it helps me do. So we have to be pretty good at it. We have to know how to solve for that variable, and they get trickier and trickier as you kind of progress through algebra. So at this point, we're doing problems with quadratics. We're doing squared problems where we have a lot of variables that are squared. And for our video today, we are going to try 3 different problems and see if you can kind of get the hang of them. So let's look at our first problem today. Here is our first problem for today. We are going to solve for x. And I think what I'm going to do for my notes is I'm going to label this example 1. So we'll put that here, example 1. Try to make my notes look a little nicer. And here's our equation. We want to solve for x, and our problem is x squared minus 13x plus 40 equals 0. So here's what I know. Typically speaking, when I solve for x, I put a line down the middle and I try to get x isolated. I try to get the variable by itself and then the answer over on the opposite side. But that's extremely challenging when there's an x squared involved because I cannot get rid of it. Like I'm kind of stuck actually. So we have this other strategy, and you've watched it in a couple videos now, where we say, okay, well, it's equal to 0. So if I can figure out how to factor this into 2 parentheses, then one of these has to be 0 to make this equation true. Because when you're multiplying things together and getting 0 as an answer equals 0, one of these has to be 0. So our job is to say, okay, we've got a quadratic, it's an x squared, I'm not going to be able to isolate the variable, so instead I'm going to use my factoring skills. So I'm going to go off to the side over here, and I'm going to use my rectangle, my generic rectangle process. And we're pretty good at these. We've done a lot of these in class, so we kind of fly through them now. The x squared we know goes in the corner. The plus 40 goes across from it. And then we know 40 times x squared is 40x squared. So our job is to build our diamond and to figure out what multiplies to 40, but the key factor here is the thing that we are dealing with, the minus 13x. So if I put the minus 13x in the bottom, let's think of things that get me to 40 and 13. So 40 would be like 1 times 40 or 2 times 20. I'm kind of running through a list. 3 times, I don't know, how about 4 times 10? But do any of these like add or subtract up to 13? They really don't. 4 times 10, how about 5 times 8? Hey, how about 5 and 8? Isn't 5 plus 8 13? So if we made this a negative 5 and a negative 8, a negative 5x times a negative 8x is a positive 40x squared. And negative 5 plus negative 8 is negative 13. So perfect, we just solved our diamond. So I'm going to put a little negative 5x here and a negative 8x here. And I'm going to kind of quickly go around the outside because I've done a lot of these and we can go kind of fast. So x times x is x squared. X times negative 5 is negative 5x. Negative 5 times negative 8 gives me a positive 40. And I get this, x minus 5, x minus 8. Done. So up in my parentheses, I get to write x minus 5 and x minus 8. And then I still have some solving to do. Here's what I now know. I now know that one of these 2 parentheses would have to be 0 to make this true. So I'm going to split this up into 2 little problems. Either x minus 5 has to equal 0 or x minus 8 has to equal 0. Both of those are very easy equations for me to solve. All I got to do, add the 5 over. X is going to equal a positive 5. That's one answer. Add the 8 over. X is going to equal a positive 8. There's my second answer. So there are 2 possible values that x could be. It could be 5 or it could be 8. Now, if I wanted to take the time to get a level 4, I would go over here and I would do my check. I would make sure that 5 squared minus 13 times 5 plus 40 actually equaled 0. And I would make sure if I did 8, 8 squared minus 13 times 8 plus 40 would also have to equal 0 for these both to be true. So that would be kind of how I run through my check. But I'm not going to do that for this video today because I kind of want to keep practicing just the solving process. So let's look at one that might be a little bit harder. We're going to do example 2, and we're going to say solve for W. And I'll write example 2 right here. Example 2. Okay, so solve for W. Here's our equation. W squared minus W equals 30. W squared minus W equals 30. So I put my line down the middle, and my algebra brain says, I see a quadratic, I see a W squared, I don't see a way of getting rid of it. So I'm feeling a little bit stuck right now, and I'm thinking, oh, well then I'll use the factor process instead. But there's a little bit of a trick to it. When we factor, it's got to be equal to what? It's got to be equal to 0. We can't have it equal to 30. That's not going to work. So what I'm going to have to do is take this 30 over, subtract it to the other side. So I'm going to get W squared minus W minus 30 equals nothing on the right, equals 0. And now I'm at a point where I'm like, okay, cool. I got it equal to 0. Now I can use my factor strategy and do my rectangle diamond and solve this thing. But truly, I had to move that 30 over first for it to work. Now it's equal to 0. Now it's possible. So I'm going to go down below, and I'm going to do the rectangle process again. And I would encourage you to see if you can beat me in this video. You should be getting really quick at these, so you might try to kind of race me to the finish line here with factoring, because you want to be quick at these. So I'm going to fill in my corners, W squared and a minus 30. I'm going to multiply that to negative 30 W squared. In the bottom, I guess I'll have to put this minus W. And I'm multiplying to 30, so 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, 4 times, 5 times 6. Okay, so I got a lot of options here, but I need a negative 30 and a negative W. So if I threw in some negatives, let's say I did like 5 times negative 6. That would give me 5 take away 6. I think that would work. If I did a 5W and a negative 6W, 5 take away 6 is negative 1W. There we go. That's going to be my strategy. So 5W and negative 6W go in the corners. I'm going to multiply the outsides now. W times W, W times 5, 5 times negative 6. There we go. Those are my parentheses. So we got a W plus 5 and a W minus 6. So that's what goes up here, a W plus 5 and a W minus 6. And so now one of those has to equal 0. So I'm going to split this up into 2 possible answers. Either W plus 5 has to equal 0, or W minus 6 has to equal 0. And each of those are real quick solvings. We're going to take that 5 over, make it W equals a minus 5, a negative 5. And we're going to add this 6 over, and we're going to get W equals a positive 6. And that's it. Those are my 2 answers. So W is equal to negative 5, and W is equal to 6. Now for this one, I am going to check it. I'm going to go all the way back to the original and practice the check process. So I'm going to be doing 2 checks. I'm going to say check, check. And my plan is to check both possible answers. One answer is we think W is equal to negative 5, and one answer is we think W is equal to 6. So to check this thing, we go back to our original equation, which was W squared minus W equals 30. Let's try it with negative 5 and see if this is true. Is negative 5 squared minus a negative 5 equal to 30? Let's see, negative 5 squared, 5 times 5 is 25, so this is a positive 25. And minus turns into a plus 5 equals 30, and 25 plus 5 is 30. 30 equals 30. We definitely feel good about that answer. That is for sure checked. Let's try it with the 6. If it's W squared minus W equals 30, then we're going to be doing 6 squared minus 6 is equal to 30. Well, what's 6 times 6? 6 squared is 36. Take away 6. Oh, there you go. 36 take away 6 is 30. 30 equals 30. So both answers look good to me. And now I've got a level 4. I've gone advanced. I've not only solved it, but I've checked it. Now, I don't feel like my work is the most beautiful today in this video. It's a little messy if you kind of look at it all. But it is detailed. I do have everything written down. I don't feel like it's horrible. I think I could make it a little neater, but I am showing everything that's happening in my head. So that's the key thing here, is get it down on paper. Get your strategy down on paper. So let's do one more, and this will be the last one for our video. We're going to do an example 3. And this time we are going to solve for m. So example 3. Solve for m. And the problem is m squared minus 3m equals negative 2. What do you think most people do by mistake? Most people forget to set it equal to 0. This is where mistakes are always happening. Now, we see it's quadratic. We see the m squared. But we must remember, take that 2 over and add it back over to the other side. We've got to have only a 0 on the right-hand side. So this is m squared minus 3m, and now we've got a plus 2. And now I'm fine. Now I'm like, oh, cool, it's factorable. I'm going to get my double parentheses, set it equal to 0, and I'm going to solve. So right now for the video today, I'd like you to pause the button and make this your you-try problem. We've got it all set up. See if you can finish this out and get your answers for m correct. Go ahead and try right now. All right, are you unpausing the video? Let's see how you did. Now, you should have done this all on your own, so I'm going to go pretty quick here. I'm going to set up my rectangle, set up my diamond. I'm going to fill in my missing parts, m squared and 2, so that's 2m squared, and a negative 3m. Not very much multiplies to 2, just 1 times 2 really. But I'm going to use a negative 1m and a negative 2m to get a negative 3m. So we've got a negative m and a negative 2m. M times m is m squared. M times negative 1 times a negative 2. There's my parentheses. So in my parentheses I have m minus 1 and m minus 2. I'm going to split these up for my 2 answers. I'm going to have m minus 1 equals 0 and m minus 2 equals 0. And those are going to be pretty simple. I'm going to add the 1 and add the 2 over. I'm going to get m equals a 1 and m equals a 2. And those are my 2 answers. So hopefully you got the exact same thing. Like I said, I kind of fly through these once I've done a lot of them. So hopefully you're flying through them also. But the whole entire idea is if you see a quadratic, you see a squared, then you kind of know, like, I'm going to probably have to factor to make this work. And if I'm going to factor, it's got to be equal to 0. I think that's a really key feature right there. Any factoring, you've got to have it set equal to 0. Hence, we call it the zero product property. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and hopefully you're feeling pretty confident in your skills on these, I hope. And if you need more help in class, let me know. All right, bye, guys.